Thank you so much, Sippy, for organizing and there we go. All right, I know there's a couple of people that are looking for seats, so I will just give you all a minute to find seats, make yourself comfortable. It's great to be back here. Okay, so the title of today's class, actually, I don't remember. It was, well, I'll tell you what, I can't remember what we put on the flyer in the end. Okay, so yes, I need to clarify the title. The title really is Life Lessons from the Laws of Giving Charity. And I'll tell you what the purpose of today's class is. There is a couple of purposes of today's class. So number one, it's to go through the laws of charity, because I think the laws of charity on its own teaches us so much, right? And however much, we'll talk a little bit more about how applicable that is to everyone, but there's also a deeper reasons that we can learn from it, and that is that the lessons that we sort of learn when we look at the laws of charity go much wider than just how we choose to give our charity money, right, or our charity time. And that's something that I want to sort of bring out. And when I talk about relationships, I'm not talking about just husband and wife or parents and kids. I'm literally talking about the way we relate to other people. And I'm assuming that for all of you that are in this room, you are relating to some other people on some level, right? You're with other people right now, right? So that's why it's applicable. And I think what it shows us really is how beautiful, how pervasive, and how holistic Torah is. I had a fascinating conversation with someone. So again, I'm not sure how familiar you all are with what Seed does, right? I mean, you obviously all here as part of Seed, but one of the things that Seed does is we do a seminar, right? We just did one recently, first time since COVID. We did a seminar, which is a Shabbaton away. What I do for Seed is I am the school's coordinator. So I work with King David and North Cheshire, a little bit with Bury and Whitefield when I have spare time. And we work with families, the kids, the parents, to engage them and show them really the beauty and the relevance of Judaism. So one of the things that we do is we do a seminar. It's a Shabbos away. Families come. They have an immersive Shabbat experience. They hear from the Seed educators. It really is a beautiful and special experience. So one of the women, one of the things that I mentioned was that a person who sincerely engages in Torah learning emerges from that a better person, right? And one of the women came to me afterwards, and she found it a fascinating idea, a fascinating concept, because if you think about it, if you're familiar with a Torah lifestyle, you probably take that as for granted, right? You probably take the idea that Torah makes you a better person for granted, right? If you have had an exposure to a Torah education on any level, that should be a foundation of what is taught. That, of course, you engage in Torah learning, you engage in mitzvahs and Torah, you become a better person. But for someone who is new to Torah learning, right, it's a mind-blowing concept. We don't see it anywhere else, right? You don't go into philosophy, right, and become out a better person, right, necessarily, right, unless you actively go into it for that purpose. So she said to me, how does it happen, right? And one of the things that I want to show you from this through this class is how it happens, right? So that it's not just about the laws of charity, right? When a person really engages it, when a person works on it, when a person brings it into their life, it might start with charity, but it goes into all areas of our life. So what am I talking about? Okay, so let's jump right into it. Let me ask you a question. Why did God create the world with poor people? God could have created the world any way he wanted. Wouldn't it be great if there was no poverty in the world?
In order to give a chance for people to live.
Okay.
We wouldn't see that need for a relationship with people.
Okay. These are all great answers.
For those to appreciate who do have them, like example, in what markets you can see the homeless people appreciate the Berkshire, we've got a better home,
Okay. So I mean, we've got firstly to say what we've got so far is we've got to give us the opportunity to give, to give us gratitude, to sorry, I forgot what you said. You said something about
To relate to the
to helping us to relate to other people, right? And I think I want to spell it out, even though you've already said it, is that we look into the mitzvah of charity, for example, right? What is the mitzvah of charity? There's a mitzvah in the Torah that we have to support people that have less, right? Or people that cannot support themselves, right? They have needs, we need to support them. And we often look at that mitzvah and think, yeah, that makes sense, right? I mean, I have yet to meet someone that would tell me and say, that mitzvah of charity, that's like, that doesn't make sense, right? We want to understand if someone's poor, yes, we have an obligation to help them out. And if I can, I have an obligation to meet them out. But what Torah actually tells us is the opposite, right? We think the mitzvah of charity is there because there are poor people. Therefore, God said, support the poor people. The Torah actually says the opposite, right? God created poor people in order for us to fulfill the mitzvah of charity, right? There are poor people that are created in order for us to give to those people, for us to be able to fulfill that mitzvah of charity. Before I go into why, I want to answer a question that that sometimes comes up, and some of you may have. Or let me ask you a question before I assume what's in your head. Does anyone have any questions on that?
Yeah, still not good for the poor person.
Brilliant. That's the first question that often comes to mind. That hey, that's not fair, right? So you're saying that this poor person exists in order to so that I can fulfill the charity. You're raising a very, very good question, and I want to answer that. I think it's important to answer that question. Did you want to say something?
The poor person is also a service to get closer to Hashem, because he feels like he needs Hashem's connection much more. The relationship is relying on Hashem.
Absolutely, and yes.
It also gives us a mitzvah, which provides the money for the poor person, because everybody is obligated to give.
Right, everyone is obligated to give. Yes.
Even somebody who is poor and relies on charity to survive, doesn't mean they're going to allow us all the time. And if things improve, they know that they have to also give to them.
Right, and well, yes, you're 100% right. Like even, I think for most people, you can give something, right? Even if you may need to get in other areas, you can give something. But I want to also take a step back and really talk and really tackle that question, because it's such a fundamental question. And I think, you know, the challenge, when this question becomes clear, is because we see it from a this world perspective. Obviously, we live in this world, right? So that's how we see it, right? When we widen our gap, our viewpoint, and realize that we're in this world in order to connect to God, in order to create ourselves, become the best version of ourselves. Yes, a poor person, it's a challenge, but so is richness. So is someone who is wealthy, right? If you think about it, there is a challenge to be poor and accept that this is the lot that God has given you. And there is a challenge to be wealthy and to say, you know what? I still need God. I still need to connect to God. I need to use that money for a good purpose. If you think about it, right? Like money, I don't know how many people you've met that say, I have enough money. Not many, right? And I want to tell you, I used to live in Vancouver, Canada, which is a very, very wealthy, especially the Jewish community. I mean, it's a very wealthy city there. In order to own a property, you need to be a millionaire anyway, right? But the Jewish community there is very, very well to do. And I knew people that were, I'm talking about fabulously wealthy, right? Fabulously wealthy. Like they could, you know, support a hospital or whatever, and they did really, really good things with their money. There's nothing wrong with being fabulously wealthy. And yet they still continue to work to build up the empire. Why? Because money lends itself to, no matter how much I have, I want more, right? I want more and more. Because money's not, if you think about it, money's not just about buying power. There's a status to it, right? We do kind of equate money with power, right? If you think about it, how often people complain and say the problem comes inside. The problem will say, like when it comes to getting your kid into school, when it comes to communal organizations, right? Like the people with money have more power, right? And it's a reality of life. It is a reality of life that if you have two families and one family is fabulously wealthy and potential donor of a school, and one family is just a regular family and the school has limited spaces, which child are they going to accept?
Every
No.
child.
They should accept every child. They should accept every child, but in reality, it is. I mean, it's
money. It's also other things like gifts and all that. But except the one who's more, it's a element
it is yes, it is a false world, and we do sort of attach to yeah, it's true, and we see it very, very, very clearly with money, right? Like people are afraid, right, to lose potential donors, and if you put yourself in the head, in the mindset of someone who has the responsibility for the financial running of an organization, I think we can understand a little bit more the fear of saying no to someone who potentially could fund the organization. Obviously, as believing Jews, as someone who believes in God and that God runs the world, a person has to be able to understand that money comes from God, not from this person. And what's fascinating is if you read the stories of true Torah leaders, right? True Torah giants, they are people that are able to do the right thing no matter where it's coming from, right? They are people that are able to say, is this school the right place for this child? I will take that child. Is what I'm going to do the right thing to do for me, for my organization, for my community? It doesn't matter, right? So I'm saying that, do you get what I'm trying to say? Is that money is a power, right? Money is a power. Let's be realistic about it. Money is a power. And on the other hand, true Torah leaders and true Torah people are able to overcome the lure of the power, right? We see this from Yaakov, right? What happened is Yaakov was fabulously wealthy. Jacob, our forefather, he was fabulously wealthy, and he crossed over the river, and he realized that he had left a couple of little jugs over there. So what would most of us do at that point? A couple of jugs, right? I don't. Maybe I'm the only one that it's happened to, right? You go shopping and you realize that you've left something in the shop. You've already paid for it. I've left it in the shop. I'll talk about my life. I've got the kids in the car. Forget about it, right? Like, is it really worth it for me to like get the kids out, unstrapped, and get them back into the shop to pick up that cucumber that I left behind? Like, forget about it. I'm not going to do that. What does Yaakov do? Is he goes back across the river to pick up those two jugs. Why? He didn't need it. He wasn't a poor person that needs those two little jugs. He was fabulously wealthy. He's sending his brother sheep and all these massive gifts. Like, why does he need it? Why does he do it? What could possibly have gone through his mind that would tell him, I should go across and get it?
Appreciate money.
But why appreciate money? He doesn't need it.
Yes, every single thing has a purpose. And that's Hashem's giving it to him, therefore it's his obligation to use it.
Exactly. You said it so well, right? That Yaakov understood that our resources are given to us from God for a reason, right? And money is so powerful. And with that power comes the opportunity to use it correctly, right? Because if you think about it, when something is very powerful and you are able to use that well, what a challenge you overcome, right? If you think about it, right? Like, why does it impress us when a organization is able to do the right thing, even though it potentially means that they will jeopardize a donor's donation? Why does it impress us? Because we recognize the challenge, we recognize how hard it is, right? So that's I think the foundation number one is to recognize that yes, Hashem has given us, God has given us this powerful force in our life, this money, and with that money is not good or evil. Money is powerful. And with that power comes our opportunity to choose to do the right thing with it, right? With that power comes our opportunity to do the right thing with it. And the second thing that I think is so powerful that we can take out of it is that we look at it and we think, I've got to give because this poor person, let's just say you have someone that knocks on your door, or I think something that comes that I think has become much more common nowadays is you get another text message for a crowdfunding campaign, right? What's our natural reaction? Delete it. Not again, right? I've had this message again, right? What does this mitzvah teach us? It's teaching us, I got this message. That is God sending me an opportunity to do a mitzvah, right? Now, when a person uses that, it's just a different way of looking at it, right? The person that knocks on my door asking for money, I don't know if it still happens nowadays. It does, I think, still happen, right? Our natural reaction is like, oh, come on, I'm busy, I'm doing other stuff, right? When we stop and say, wait a second, this person was created, this need was created so that I can partner with God to fulfill that need. It's like, okay, I'll go and answer the door with a smile. I'll give what I can. How does this relate to our life?
We have to realize the mitzvahs are given for us only here in this world. We have to grab each one, because once we get to the next one, they're just not there.
Yes, the opportunities are given to us here. And I would also say, again, maybe it's just me, but sometimes we're met with challenging people, right? Just me or other people as well, right? The person that, you're driving, and the person that just stops in the middle of the road, right? Or they're driving, the worst crime, they're driving slowly, right? Maybe they're looking for a house number and they're driving slowly and you're thinking like, what on earth? Like, who gave you your license? Hold on a second. This person was put in front of you, driving slowly, put in front of me, driving slowly to teach me. Have a little bit of patience. Have a little bit of compassion, right? There are times where I also drive slowly, right? There are times where I also make the wrong turn or whatever and then change things. None of us are perfect, right? And I think when we take this lesson that we're taught from Tzedakah, right? We're told Hashem created poor people, God created poor people in order that we can fill that need, right? Every single person that is put into our life is put there in order, it's an opportunity for us to become better, right? To grow our muscles, to do a mitzvah, to work on ourselves. It's such a different way of living our life, right? And it helps diffuse the stress and the tension within ourselves when we realize, like, I have kids, right? And sometimes, full disclosure here, my kids challenge me a little bit, right? They may challenge my patience a little bit, right? And I can't tell you the difference between when let's say, for example, I'm not a morning person, right? And I'm trying to get the kids out the house in the morning to get to school. I'm a relatively good time, right? The difference between I'm focused on I need to get those kids into the car versus I need to get those kids into the car, which means I need to do that in a calm, in a way that is in keeping with all the mitzvahs of that. The Torah is filled with mitzvahs of how to treat other people, right? We have to treat them with kindness. We can't use hurtful words. We can't embarrass them. Like all these, the Torah is filled with interpersonal mitzvahs of how we relate to other people. And none of that changes if the person we're dealing with is annoying. If the person that we're dealing with is making my life a little bit uncomfortable, if the person is obviously, if a person is abusive, dangerous, toxic, etc., and you're in harm in any way, that's obviously you don't have to engage in that relationship, right? But none of that changes just because, or if that person is small, right? None of that changes, right? Like you can't do it. And when we realize, like, no, it's me. Right, it's me. I have to work on myself. I have to be the person that is the giver, that is the worker, that is doing that internal work. It changes. It changes our approach. It changes everything, and we become the better people from it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You said that's a dog, so isn't there a saying for others,
Yes.
so people who are happy with what they've got are rich. You do see a lot of people who are okay, I'm happy, I'm okay for what I want. They're really rich, they appreciate the money, don't they? You have to be well to appreciate what you get though.
Absolutely. I mean, look, there's yes. Okay. So sorry. Esther said that Pirkei Avot tells us that who's rich, someone who is happy, right? And I think that's the mitzvah for the person that has the needs, right? And or the truth is, forget about it. That is good advice for every single one of us, right? If you know what, I think the way we live in nowadays, for most people, there's always a need, right? There's always something more that we can get, right? Even if you have the beautiful house and the beautiful cars and the nice holidays and whatever else, there's always the extra that you can get, right? There's always the more, right? So what Pirkei Avot is saying, if you want to be rich, the way to richness is to be happy, right? Because it doesn't matter how much money you have in the bank account. You know, it's about how you feel about it. And I've seen this so many times, right? Like when we lived in Canada, I used to work for NCSY. NCSY is a youth group organization. What we used to do is we used to run programs for teenagers, and it was very interesting to me to see the different families that we worked with. Right, there were some people that I knew, you know, were very financially comfortable, and yet they felt poor. Right, they could never afford anything. Right, there was a, you know, it's not about how much money you have in the bank account. It's about how you feel about what you have in the bank account, or whatever it is, how much resources you have, and that's what it's telling us. At the end of the day, there are people that cannot make ends meet. Right, that every single month they have a deficit. Right, they can't afford to pay the rent. They cannot afford to you know, when they go and buy food for their kids or for themselves or whatever, it's a struggle. They have to weigh it up, right? Am I going to be able to buy it? The reality is they can't, or they have medical bills and they can't, right? They can't sleep at night because they don't know how they are going to be able to afford to get something they actually need, right? Which there is an obligation on someone who can to help them out, right? To give to people that can't afford it. The person, right, who is living that can still be happy, right? And that's what Pirkei Avot is saying. They can still feel rich. And how is it? And I think that's the question that you asked, is because when a person recognizes that I am in this world in preparation for the next world, and whatever challenge God sends me, whether it's a comfortable challenge or a not comfortable challenge or a difficult challenge, is a challenge that I can find meaning in, right? That I can make meaningful. That's the key to happiness, right? When a person realizes that, yes, times are rough. And yes, the stress of how am I going to be able to pay this medical bill, right? Or how am I going to pay my rent? Or I hope I'm not going to lose my house, or whatever it is, right? And I want to share something about how Jewish law defines needs, right? And realizes that it's hard and it's a struggle, but I can make that struggle meaningful. That is the key to happiness. Yes.
How to start. I gave them hard time at the moment. My husband's doing this stuff, but medical problems as well, and it's quite difficult. And all of a sudden, a few months ago, somebody came back to me from years ago. I went to a shir, and the rabbi started off the shir by saying, "We should always thank Hashem every day for the things He's given us." Of course, they're smiling a lot in your head, how you do, don't you? Then he paused, and then he said, "We should also thank Hashem every day for the things He hasn't given us." And that, I think, is the most valuable, one of the most valuable lessons I've ever learned in my life, because I could not cope with what I'm going through now if I hadn't remembered that from the past.
Yeah.
It changed the whole outlook on life.
Yeah. And I want to say something is that Hashem gave that to you, that insight,
Yes.
so that you could cook. And I also want to say, I heard something in a share that I listened to a couple of years ago, where the rabbi was talking about menuchas hanefesh, right, which is peace of mind. And he says, what do we think peace of mind usually is? We usually think peace of mind is knowing, like, if someone's going through a hard time, what I'll often say is what we tend to want to say, or the first thought that comes to mind is it's going to be okay. Right? If it's not, it's all going to be okay in the end. If it's not okay, it's not the end, etc. So that's not menuchas nefesh. That's not peace of mind. You know what peace of mind is? Is knowing that I don't know whether it's going to be okay or not, but it can be meaningful. Right? That whatever God sends us, we can make meaningful. And I think what you shared with us just now, thank you for sharing that, is that you can go through a difficult time, and yet you can take meaning from it. You can make it meaningful, right? You can use that you can, within that, you're still connecting to Hashem, you're still coming to Torah class, you're still building your neshama. What's more meaningful than that, right? And that really is what he said is that menuchas hanefesh, that peace of mind that we all want, right? Everyone wants, every human being wants peace of mind. We want to be able to sleep at night, right? We want to be able to lessen the stress, is knowing that I don't know what's going to be, because life is very uncertain. We all know that. We've all experienced it, that life is very uncertain. There's nothing that we can kind of say, you know what, it's going to be okay, it's going to be whatever. But it can be meaningful. Yes.
Every time an opportunity comes to do a mitzvah, you can't always say yes. So that will feel bad when you say no. Because if, as you say, if somebody knocks on your door, or just not for money, just to help out with something, I would always say yes.
You
I feel bad to say no.
100%. 100%. You can't always say yes. Did you want to say something?
You have to know when a yes means yes and no means no. So I've come to that place, that healthy place now, when I can say let's yes to something or no to something, but not feel bad. So I get what you're saying, you can't say no. So let's say at the end of the month, let's say it comes to the note comes in through the door. I say no because I've finished up my master money for that month. So I know I physically can't do it. And I won't do it if it will take away from my family.
And I think two things I've got to add to that. I think you're so 100% right. Both of you raised a very good point. You can't always say yes, right? And I'm going to say something else, right? Every yes is also a no, right? When you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else, right? I'll give you an example. And again, I know that we're all different and we're all at different stages of life, and I hope you don't mind that I'm sharing my personal stage of life, right? But I hope we can all take it and apply it to your life, right? So my personal stage of life is I'm a mom with young kids, right? I've got older kids. My oldest is almost 18, and my youngest is 2. So if someone was to come to me and say, Gila, can you help me can you make supper for us today, right? So if I say yes to them, I'm saying no to something else, right? Now it could be I'm saying no to relaxing on the couch with a book when I don't really need that extra relaxation time. It could be I'm saying no to spending time with one of my children that really need that time. Now it's a question of, why does that help? Because now I'm saying, hold on a second. Which yes is more important, right? Which yes is it more important for? Is it more important for me to make supper for this person, or is it more important for me to spend time with that child? Every single yes comes with a no. And it's very, very, very important that we have what I like to call a tripod of objectivity, is people in our life, relationships in our life that we can speak to for guidance, because it's the easiest person to fool is yourself. The easiest person to fool is yourself. And you can see this if you've ever watched two people have an argument, or maybe you've been in that argument, and one person says, why are you so annoyed? And the other person says, I'm not annoyed. Which one is usually right?
The one that's annoyed.
No, the one that says, why are you so annoyed, right? If you've ever been in an argument with someone else and the other person says to you, why are you so annoyed? And you're like, I'm not annoyed, I'm not shouting. Like, why? It's hard for us to recognize that within ourselves. The hardest person, the easiest person to fall is ourselves. And that's why it's very important to have someone a rabbi, a Rebbetzen, a mentor, someone above us, right? In life wisdom and Torah wisdom that we can ask these questions to, right? You can't always ask ahead of time, but you can sometimes when it comes to bigger decisions, you can ask ahead of time, or sometimes you can ask after the fact and learn from it, right? It's also very, very important to have people, friends, peers, right, that are like you, that are interested in growing and interested in doing the right thing, because a good friend will also help keep us grounded. And you know, a good friend is someone who can kind of ask you, is that really what you want to be doing? Is that really, like, you know, like if you are that type of person that is volunteering, and your family's losing out because of it, a good friend may be able to spot that in you and say, is that really where you want to be? And if you're a good friend to her, you might be able to hear that, right? So and the other sort of relationship, and Perry Carver talks about this a lot, is to have students, right? To have, it doesn't have to be like students, it has to be someone who we can give to, right? Because that also helps us keeps us grounded. It helps us remember that I'm a role model to other people, and sometimes we learn the most from them, right? You know, if you've had, it's happened to me, I've had a child that's turned around to me and said, ask the question, right? And it makes me realize, hold on a second, you know what? You're right. I should be doing something better, right? I should be doing something. So that is, we got slightly off topic, but hopefully it was helpful anyway. So that is the thing that absolutely, and come back to the laws of tzedakah. The halachas, the laws of tzedakah gives us the answer here, right? Under most circumstances, we are supposed to give 10% of what we have to charity. And we're not supposed to give more than 20%, right? Why? The idea there is that a person's not supposed to give so much that they themselves will fall into charity needs, right? If someone is so wealthy that they won't notice if they give more than 20%, they're allowed to. But for the average person, you're supposed to give 10% and not more than 20%. And within that 10% that we're giving to charity, there's a hierarchy of needs, right? Our family comes first, right? You know, and then I don't have the list of priority, but basically the theme that comes out of the priority is that the closer the relationship is, the higher priority it gives, right? So we give to people that are closest to us before we give to someone in a different country, for example, right? So even that teaches us where we put our yeses and where we say our nos. And if someone can't afford, then they can't afford. Again, when we have that clarity of knowing, right, what we're saying yes to, and we have someone that we can ask those questions to, then we can let go of the guilt, right? Because Hashem, you gave me the money, right? And I've done what I've done with it. And if I've got no more, then I can't. And there's nothing to feel guilty about. Okay, so what have we discussed so far? We've discussed the idea that money is a very, very powerful force in our life, and with that power comes the opportunity to do the right thing, right? And we've discussed the idea that Hashem, God created poor people in order that we can fill that need, right? And that applies 100% to charity, but it applies to every area of our life, right? That Hashem has created people, situations, and things in our life in order that we can grow and, you know, do mitzvahs and also grow ourselves, right? Create ourselves into better people through those things that God sends in our life. Now, let me ask you a question. What do we gain by giving charity, right? And what I mean by that is, if we're saying that Hashem created poor people in order that we should be able to give, there's got to be a really good root, something that we get by giving. So what do we gain by giving?
When you give
Compassion.
you're going to get that because it's nice to.
Yes, it's the one mitzvah that we can.
Calendar, is that the word?
I think so. Not, yes.
Yes.
It's the one mitzvah that we're told that a person that gives charity to others doesn't lose out, and it's the one mitzvah that we're actually allowed to test God on. I have an amazing story. Should I share it?
Yes.
Personal story. Okay, so when we lived we've lived in quite a few different places. So we lived in Germany for a year and a half, and at the time I was pregnant, and I had been working for a UK company. So I had my baby, and because I was working for a UK company, I wasn't sure whether I was entitled to maternity allowance in the UK or not. So I applied from Germany, and I told them where I lived. You know, I put my Berlin address on it, and I sent it off. I never heard back from them. So whatever, I assumed, okay, I'm not eligible for it, and that was that. We then, when my baby was about 9 months old, we moved to Calgary in Canada, and we were living there. And then, as she was my second, my oldest was 3, and he was about to start school. So he starts school, and my baby at this point was probably about a year and a half or so. And the school asked us to give a donation to the school. So we decided to give. And we gave a certain amount, and the next part of the story is just crazy. We get a letter in Calgary. I have no idea to this day how they got us our address, and it was from the UK HMRC, right? And they said, basically the letter said is, we just found your maternity allowance claim. It had gotten lost. This is a year and a half after my baby was born. It has gotten lost in our system. Sorry. The getting lost in the system is not the crazy part, but I had never followed up on it because I assumed I wasn't living in the UK. I was living in Germany, and I wasn't eligible for it. We approved it, and we gave you the entire amount, and they had given us the entire amount in our bank account, and almost dollar to pound was exactly the same of the amount that we had given to charity.
Had you not given it, would you have got it back? Because someone's waiting for you to have an opportunity to give that tzedakah to the school for your child.
Absolutely, like it's whatever. All of you, I'm talking in the UK, right? So you know the fact that, okay, as you said, the fact that it got lost in the system, okay, but the fact that without following it up, a year and a half later, they should just randomly find it, deposit the money, and I have no idea how they got my address in Calgary. I have no idea how the letter didn't go to the UK. It didn't go to my address in the UK. It didn't go to my address in Germany. It went to my address in Calgary. And the pound started, you gotta be like, have like such thick blinders on to not see that, wow, Hashem is saying, you gave to charity, I'm giving back to you. And thank God, we've seen it quite a few times in our life, in our personal life, that we give charity, and then it's like, we get that pound, and then it's like, oh man, I should have given more, right? Okay. We got slightly distracted. This is the question we're trying to answer. So we get compassion, absolutely. And Rav Shlomo Wolbe says that what tzedakah does for us is it trains us to look and see what other people are missing, right? And there's an incredible story, you may or may not have heard it before, but I'll share it anyway. Someone once went to, I believe it was the Bris Corral, and just before Pesach, and he said to me, asked him a halachic question. He said to him, am I allowed to use milk for the 4 cups of wine? Right? And the Bris Corral, I don't know what he answered him, but what do you hear when you hear that question? He hasn't got enough money to buy wine. Okay, so the Bris Corral, being the Bris Corral, you'd expect him to give him money to buy wine. He gave him an amount that was much, much larger than that. And someone asked him, why are you giving so much money? And he says, listen, if he's asking me, can I use milk? That means that he's not planning on serving meat or chicken for the Seder night, which means that he can't afford to buy meat or chicken for the Seder night. Now, if he can't afford to buy meat or chicken for the Seder night, he can't afford to buy it for any other meat over Pesach, right? Because obviously, if you think about it, if you put yourself in that mindset, if you have a little bit of money, you're going to spend it for the nicest for the Seder night. So he says, I'm giving him enough money that he can buy food for the whole of Yom Tov, right? Now, again, like, and I think this is what goes back to what I started with, that this is what Torah does to a person, right? This is what Torah does to a person. A person, it makes you a different person. It makes you be able to see and wow, like, instead of just, this is a person that needs money for wine. Here, take I don't know, £100 to buy yourself wine, however much it costs to buy wine. It's like, here, take £1,000 and cover all your, buy yourself food and your family food for Yom Tov, right? It teaches you to look into the other person's life, the world, and to see what they're not saying. This person didn't come to him and say, I need money for wine, right? And we if we had been in that situation and we would have seen to buy the person wine, we would have felt great about ourselves, and we should, because the person didn't ask for us. And we're going to go through the 8 levels of tzedakah, and we're going to see that giving before you're asked is greatness. But there's another level, is to really sort of say, hold on a second, I get what's going on here, right? I get what's going on here. And how does that happen? That happens by flexing our compassiousness, right? Every time, you give. If that person is sends you that crowdfunding thing, right? And maybe you don't have the funds to give, right? Maybe you can give £5, right? Maybe you don't have the funds to give. But maybe you could text them back and say, but maybe it's more annoying to have to be the one to ask, right? And when we get that, when we develop that compassion, it changes how we respond. So maybe then I'm more inclined, even if it's if I can, I'll give a small donation. But if I can't, even a nice word is something, right? Like to say, I wish I could help, or I've given someone else, or I whatever. Like it develops that compassion within us. Okay, so let's try and talk about the 8 levels of charity, which really was what the whole class was about, but we're going to try and squeeze it in. It was supposed to be a short class, training us that if you're giving charity, what's the best way to give? What's the next best way if you have a choice? Right? Obviously, if it's what would work under that is to give a person a job, to help a person's in the financial situation where they can give a loan and not ask for it back, right? That is the highest level of charity, even though it is at the end of the day a gift and a charity. Because if you think about it, if you're on the receiving end, what would you rather, a loan or a charity? A loan, because you maintain your dignity, right? And that's what level number 1 is teaching us. Is that yes, and I think what Esther taught us earlier about that contentment. Yes, charity is important, right? Charity is important, and it's important to help other people. But don't forget that human beings have emotional needs, right? Human being has a deep need to maintain their dignity. And again, this is something that it's in charity. We learn it from the charity, but in which situation does it not apply to? Right? When we relate to other people, right? If you're talking to someone else and they're wrong, right? Point it out in a way that they maintain the dignity, right? If you interact with children, same. Just because they're small doesn't mean they don't have that need for their dignity as well. So it's something so powerful. Okay, the next level. What is the next level? And I think a couple of you said it. It is to, and where both are anonymous, right? The person that's giving doesn't know who's getting, and the person that's getting doesn't know who's giving. So a practical example of that is when you give through an organization, right? If you give, if there's, let's say, an organization, for example, like Tzom Shabbos, which gives people food, and you give a donation to them, and they're giving the money to someone else. So, and again, why is that such a high level? It protects their dignity, right? If the person's on the receiving end and they, for example, let's say Esther gives me money to whatever, and I get the money, I don't know that's coming from Esther. So if I see Esther in the street, I don't have to feel embarrassed, right? And if Esther sees me, she doesn't have to feel awkward that she's supporting me. Okay, what's level number 3?
Food. Like, you know, see people on the street, you get them food, not money, because
it's a good point, and we'll talk about that in a second. But the 3 levels, these 8 levels don't talk about what you're giving, but how you're giving. Okay.
One way should be anonymous.
Yes. So the giver knows to who they're getting it, but the person who's getting it doesn't know who it's coming from. And there's an incredible story in the Gemara that's taught about this. You may know it, so apologies if you know it. So Mar Ukva, and used to give. He was a rabbi in the Gemara, and he used to give charity every morning on his way. He knew there was a certain person, a family in his neighborhood didn't have money, so he used to take a few coins, drop it through the door. Now one day, the person who's getting it, the recipient, says, "I want to know who's giving me this money. I want to thank them." Right? Now, this was the days before CCTV, before your Ring doorbell, right? So what was there in those days? The only thing was human surveillance. So he wakes up early in the morning and he's like, I'm gonna keep keep track and see who it is. So Mar Ukva drops the money off, and the man comes to open the door to see who it is. And Mar Ukva and his wife were together, and they wanted to protect the dignity of the person, so they run away. And they find the only place that they could hide, which was the big communal ovens. Again, this was the days before people had personal ovens in their homes. They had a big communal oven, and they go and they hide in the oven, and it was still boiling hot. Now, what happens is Mar Ukva's wife, her feet did not get burnt. So Mar Ukva put his feet on her feet to protect his feet, because his feet were starting to get burnt. And he was upset. He says, why does my wife have the merit that her feet are protected, but my feet are getting burnt? And his wife said to her, his wife said to him, she said, you know why? It's because I'm at home. And when people come, and this is what Esther was saying, when people come, I'm more accessible to poor people, right? I can give them food, right? I can be there for them. And because of that, that's why I have a greater merit here on my feet getting protected. And with that, he comforted his husband, which really, I think, also, again, shows us about the importance of protecting dignity. It wasn't like, well, it's because I have more merit. It was a beautiful way of saying, like, look. But again, it shows us about how being accessible and helping is a great merit. The 4th level, right, is the giver doesn't know who they're getting, but the recipient doesn't. Right, so if the giver doesn't know who they're getting, but the recipient does know. Again, the dignity is protected a little bit, but there's a little bit less dignity, so that's why it's a lower level. Now, the 5th level. Does anyone know what the 5th level is?
so what's the third one?
The 3rd one is the giver knows, but the recipient doesn't know.
And then the 4th.
And the 4th one is the giver doesn't know, but the recipient knows. Right, so you can see it's all about protecting the dignity of the recipient, right? Now, what's the 5th one? Does anyone know? Okay, so now it's no longer anonymous, but it's someone who gives before being asked, right? And again, what does this show when someone gives before being asked? Compassion, kindness, sensitivity. I don't know if anyone has ever been in a situation where, hopefully it was for good reasons, but sometimes, you're in a situation where you're in a situation of need, and someone texts you or someone reached out to you and says, if you need anything, let me know. What do? Usually, most of us, nothing, right? Because it's very, very hard to ask. Contrast that with someone who says, can I send you in supper for tonight? What do a lot of us at that point say? Yes, please. Right? And if you're on the recipient end of it, you should take up the offer, right? But that's another topic, right? And if you're on the recipient end of things, and someone reaches out and says, what can I do for you, or can I help you out? The offer is sincere, but the point of this level number 5, is that it's very hard to ask. It's very hard to reach out. It's hard to accept as well, right? Which is why the anonymous levels are there. But once your person already is in the position where they have to accept, it's even harder to ask. So if we as givers can reach out with kindness and sensitivity, to be kind, to be sensitive, to have compassion, to see, right? What, like that story of the brisk road, right? He reached out and saw the need without the person having to come to him and say to him, listen, I can't afford to buy. It's really hard to ask. I think we can all relate to that. It's really, really hard to ask. So for us, right? And again, it's not just charity. It's not just charity. It's every area, right? If you think that there's someone, even a phone call, even a text, right? Even a small gesture of reaching out and saying, hi, I'm thinking of you, right? It shows our sensitivity. It shows our kindness. I think we all, as adults and life experience, we all know that there are times where people struggle. And the outside world doesn't know that we're struggling. If we can be that person to reach out to someone else and say, hi, how are you? I'm thinking of you. Right? It doesn't take any money, it doesn't take anything. What it does take is it takes sensitivity and kindness. And that's what this level is teaching us. Level number 6 is after being asked, right? Someone asks you and you give them, right? Someone comes to you and says, I'm really sorry, I can't pay my bills this week. And you have the financial capacity to help them out, and you give to them. You are doing a mitzvah of charity. The 7th level is someone who gives less but gladly, right? So someone comes to you and says, I need whatever, and you say, I wish I could, this is what I can give you, but you give it with kindness, with a smile, that the person, with enthusiasm, the person knows that you want to give. That's level number 7. And why is this so important? Is because it shows that you care for their emotional needs, right? You care for the emotional needs. And the 8th level.
So you give them and you care, but
can I take the question? Let me wrap up, and then I'll take the question at the end of it. And the 8th level is you give begrudgingly, right? You don't really want to give it, and it comes across and whatever. That it's still a mitzvah. You're still on the mitzvah of charity, but it's the lowest level of giving charity. I'm going to wrap up, and then I'm going to take questions. Okay, so we've discussed a lot. We've gone lots of different ways. Let's try and tie it all together. We learned that with money is powerful, and with power comes opportunity. And the truth is, life is filled with opportunities, right? Opportunities to do good, to become better people, to create ourselves into better people. And when we have that mindset, right, that everything, right, that God gives us is an opportunity for me to become a better person. It's not so much about the other person. It's not so much, right? That it's not about the poor person, whether he's annoying or not annoying, or think. It's about how can I become better through that? How can I fill that need? How can I make this world a better place, right? And we went through the different levels of giving charity, and we learned how important it is. Number 1, to have that mindset, to realize that everything is an opportunity for me to give, for me to become better. And while I do that, to do that with compassion, with sensitivity, with kindness, right? To develop all those things within ourselves, to care not just for the person's physical needs, but to care for their emotional needs as well. And it can apply to every area of life and how we relate to other people. It doesn't matter what the relationship is, right? It doesn't matter what the relationship is. If there's another person in front of you, it's not just about caring for their physical needs or whatever. It's about caring for their emotional needs, for protecting their dignity, for giving with sensitivity, with kindness. And that is really the way we partner with God. Because God has created an imperfect world, and He's put us in this world and said, you partner with me. You help me make this world a better world. Thank you very much. I will take